Someone said to me one time, Pastor, what's the difference between being a Christian and being part of every other religion in the world? I said, my Jesus is alive. You won't name another religion in the world whose God is alive. They're all dead. Jesus is alive. I believe that. That's why I want to invite you to give your life to Christ. That's why I want to ask you if you would give your heart to Jesus. You cannot live without Him. And you cannot die without Him. I want you to give your life to Christ. So when you go back to Luke, and Luke 24 tells us about the resurrection, and I'm not going to read all these verses, so I want you to just follow with me just for a minute. For example, if you go into Luke 24, and starting at verse 13, we find Jesus, after He came out of the grave, walking on what was known as the Emmaus Road. You can see that in verse 13. And particularly in verse 15, this is what we read about this experience. As they, that is the disciples who were walking down the highway together, talked and discussed these things, Jesus Himself. Did you see that? Jesus Himself. Now remember, the disciples had seen Jesus crucified. They were in turmoil. They'd watched what happened to Him. They were even there in the Garden of Gethsemane when that band of bandits came. Remember how one of them chopped off the ear of somebody, and I mean, there was a little skirmish going on, and I'm telling you, they came, that band of bandits, and they got a hold of Jesus, and they led Him away to be crucified. They were there. They saw it. They saw Jesus walking down the road, the Via Dolorosa, carrying that heavy cross. They saw Him collapse. They saw that other man who was selected to come and carry the cross. They saw Him marched up there to the place of the skull, Golgotha. They saw Him being laid down on that chunk of wood that looked like a broken, twisted, gnarled tree. They saw those nails driven into His hands and feet. They saw Him hoisted up and dropped ignominiously into a pothole where it thudded like that, and His entire body jerked in excruciating pain. They watched Him. They stood around. They saw the Roman soldiers mocking Him and casting lots. They saw all of that, and they saw Him. They saw Him give up the spirit. They saw Him die. In fact, they even watched when they came and took His body down, and they took Him to a tomb, and they put Him in the tomb, and they saw a big old stone rolled over that. I mean, it was over. I mean, what part of graveyard dead do you not seem to understand? This Jesus was dead. And the Bible says in chapter 24, as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus Himself came up and walked with them. You can go right through this whole passage at what He did. He appeared, He talked. Let's just go all the way down. Let's see, verse 36. Go to chapter Luke 24, verse 36. Again, while they were still talking about this, Jesus Himself stood among them. Stood among them, and He spoke to them. Well, if you go down into verse 41, verse 40, He said this, He showed them. What did He show them? Someone tell me, what were the two body parts Jesus showed to the disciples? Everybody hold your hands up. Feet. Kick someone next to you. Go on, kick someone. You've been wanting to do this for a while. Oh, now wait, it gets even better, because when we get down to verse 41, they still did not believe it because of joy and amazement. So he asked them, anyone got a biscuit around here? You say, Pastor, you're being facetious. Let me tell you, this was a band of men doing what men do when they get together. They wanted to eat. Jesus said, anyone got anything to eat here? So they gave him a piece of broiled fish. All right, so what does verse 43 say? Someone tell me. And he took it. What did he do with it? Excuse me? Thought he was dead. You ever seen a dead person eating?